Hey everybody, movie reviewer next door here, and I'm back with another Bond review. We're so close to the end. After this, there's only 3 left, but they're 3 of the longest in the series. Goody me. At least this one was the shortest in the series, I'll give it that. But, I'm back with Quantum of Solace. This film was from 2008, directed by Mark Forster, and it stars Daniel Craig, Olga Kurylenko, Maciej Amalrik, Giancarlo Giannini, Jeffrey Wright, Judi Dench, Jesper Christensen, and Gemma Arterton. Now, in this film, Quantum of Solace continues the adventures of James Bond after Casino Royale. Betrayed by Vesper, the woman he loved, 007 fights the urge to make his latest mission personal. Pursuing his determination to uncover the truth, Bond and M interrogate Mr. White, who reveals that the organization that blackmailed Vesper is far more complex and dangerous than anyone had imagined. Now, what do I think about this film? Well, like the last film, it's one of those films that definitely has... It has its fans, it has its haters, but more so its haters. And Casino Royale is one of those that if you don't like it, you're wrong, or it is kind of one of those, because people are like, what are you talking about? It's like one of the best Bond movies ever. I didn't think so. I thought it was decent. I didn't even hate on it. I just don't like Daniel Craig in that role. But gotta say, this film's an improvement for me. I know no one is going to agree with me. There might be some people that are like, oh yeah, you like Quantum of Solace, whatever. But you think Quantum of Solace is better than Casino Royale? Yes, I do. I got more out of it. I think it trimmed all the unnecessary fat in Casino Royale, mainly the card game. I think it was way better paced. And I think Daniel Craig improved, actually. I think his performance here is a pretty massive improvement over Casino Royale, because I've never liked him in Casino Royale. I've always thought he was way too serious, and here he actually loosens up a bit, and I like that. So, first off, Daniel Craig as James Bond, getting into the cast. I think he does a decent job here. And yes, I do mean that. In the last film, I said he was kind of just okay. He's not doing a terrible job at playing a cool spy, but he doesn't exactly feel like James Bond. In this film, he does. He does quite a few things that feel like something Bond would do. Like using shortcuts in order to pursue someone. Basically, he's also with the girls in this one. Like, he doesn't really pursue them romantically, which I don't have an issue with that. But I just thought I'd mention it. But yeah, I like Daniel Craig in the film. Olga Kurylenko as Camille Montez. I really like her. I do. I like that both Bond and Camille are being spurred on by, revenge. Bond for Vesper, getting revenge for the death of Vesper. And Camille getting revenge for the death of her father, her mother, and her sister. I thought that was a very interesting thing, and I thought they gave them an interesting bond, and I love Olga Kurylenko, I really do. I've loved her ever since I first saw her in Hitman, which I know is another movie a lot of people shit on. I love it. I don't care what anybody says. People can have their own opinions, but I love the Hitman movie. I don't care what anybody says about that. Maciej Amalrik as Dominic Green. He is the main villain of this film and had to do with Vesper betraying Bond and basically turning her against him. I think he's a decent villain. I think his plan of using his company as a cover for him, basically stealing the oil and making, basically actually putting us in a tight spot with oil reserves and all that. I think that's an interesting plan, basically faking global warming or whatever. I think that's a very interesting plan. And Matthew, he does have his moments where he comes off a bit too much, but I'd much rather take him over Le Chiffre, because I think Le Chiffre was kind of boring, to be honest. It's kind of hard for me to be scared by someone with asthma and who constantly has people over him ready to kill him at a moment's notice, and yeah, I found him kind of boring. Giancarlo Giannini returns as Rene Mathis. I liked him. He's served his role. He's got an amazing voice. I always like watching him. Jeffrey Wright as Felix Leiter. He doesn't have much to do in this film. He utters maybe 4 whole sentences, and they're all during the same scene. He doesn't really help in the plot that much. I know a lot of people love this version of Leiter because he's the most consistently portrayed by Jeffrey Wright. I've got to say, David Hedison is still my favorite so far. I'm not really seeing what people see in Jeffrey Wright. Other than him being like the first African American Leiter, I really don't see what's so interesting about him. He's kind of just bland and not well used. Judi Dench as M. I think she's better in the Craig films than she is in the Pierce Brosnan films. So far. Because I actually do think she cares about Bond, and in the Pierce Brosnan ones it was more contempt, which I'm not big on. But she does the role well. Jesper Christensen as Mr. White, he returns. He's not in the film that much, but I still think he's an okay... I don't know how I feel about him. There are times where he's threatening, and there are times where he's not threatening at all. The scene where they're interrogating him, his acting is pretty bad, to be honest. And Gemma Arterton as Strawberry Fields. She's another person I had issues with. There's not a ton to her character. She's just a person meant to bring Bond in for questioning and whatever because they think he killed Renee. No, that hadn't happened yet. They think... No, that it's because of... They think Bond has gone rogue and she was just meant to bring him in. But, yeah, I've liked Gemma Arterton in other films. I just don't think she has enough of a character here, and some of her attempts at doing Cockney accents are really bad. Where she's trying to have a cover of a Cockney teacher, it just doesn't work because I don't think she can pull it off, and it comes off really over the top. But the opening title sequence, I forgot who did them. MK24. I haven't been mentioning who did them, but this one was interesting. I didn't hate it. It's got like a sand motif because a lot of the film takes place in deserted areas. But the song Another Way to Die, there are people that mention this and Die Another Day as being the worst theme songs of all of Bond. I guess I'd have to technically say that this isn't my worst. I think Die Another Day fits less with its film than this does, because this film, while admittedly there are parts of it that are a bit of a mess, Another Way to Die by Jack White and Alicia Keys, Jack White being from the White Stripes, and Alicia Keys, everyone knows Alicia Keys. I think the main issue isn't the composition. I think it's a well-composed song. But I think the melding of Jack White and Alicia Keys' voices don't really mix, thus creating this kind of confusing sounding song. It would have been a better duet with someone like, I don't know, Pharrell and Alicia Keys because their voices I feel would match more. But yeah, it's a decently composed song, but the voices just don't work with it. But yeah, this film, again, this is one of those films in the series that it's like, oh, if you like it, whatever, you can like it. But if you like it more than Casino Royale, people throw a fucking fit. And I gotta say, I do legitimately like this more than Casino Royale. Casino Royale, again, was 2 hours and 24 minutes. It is one of the longest in the entire series. I've always had the issue with the longer ones because there's usually, most of them are around 2 hours and 10 minutes, which I can deal with for quite a few of them. World Is Not Enough, I could deal with it. GoldenEye, I could deal with it. For Your Eyes Only. But films like Casino Royale, like, while I wouldn't say I was 100% bored, I also felt like we weren't getting much of anywhere. I feel like a lot of the card game could have been cut down, because I swear to God, there's like 15 minutes on screen of this damn card game. And it did get to be a bit much. Which is why I feel like even the ending portion felt tacked on. This film, I don't feel like anything's tacked on. It is the shortest in the series. It is an hour and 46 minutes. Which I gotta say is merciful. In some aspects. Not that it was a terrible film, thus it's shorter. This is the lowest rated on IMDb. Well, second lowest. I'm pretty sure Die Another Day is lower than this. This film does have its fans. Again, IMDb score isn't that bad. But I just really like how this finishes off the revenge plot from the end of Casino Royale. I do. I think it works well. I'm glad that they brought an end to the story. I'm glad that it wasn't just left hanging. Because one of my biggest issues with Diamonds Are Forever was that it didn't have the revenge subplot for Tracy Bond. It like started to have one at the beginning, and then it kind of just fizzled out. So I'm glad that I can give a lot of credit to Quantum of Solace for doing that. And if anything else, again, I can give more credit to Daniel Craig and how he plays the character, and how this film feels so much more like a Bond film than a lot of the others do. This film feels like it's got a fun energy to it. In the first 40 minutes, there's quite a bit of action that is, for the most part, well shot, but there are a couple bits that aren't that well edited. The biggest parts that I think suffer from the editing are the beginning car chase, which is still a fun car chase. It's still a fun action set piece. But I feel like with the director they chose, Mark Forster, he doesn't exactly do action films, really. The only other technically action film he's done was World War Z. And also Machine Gun Preacher, I guess you could technically call that an action film. But that's not his main forte. So I feel like that's what definitely affected the action. It's an interesting choice of director, and there are moments where his directorial flourishes stand out in a good way. There are moments where it doesn't. A moment where it does... Oh, I keep going past it. The action scenes that are hampered by it, the car chase at the very beginning, and the part where Bond is chasing after the rogue agent from when they're interrogating Mr. White, and there's a little bit of messy editing in the end. The Green, Dominic Green's like hotel, but there's a couple directorial flourishes I do like. There's the scene where Camille and Bond, sorry about that, Camille and Bond are in the plane, and as she's talking, a plane comes from under them and shoots them, and the camera goes through the windscreen and then comes out the back. I really like that shot. I thought it was cool. There's also, as Bond is chasing the rogue agent. Him and the agent fall from this like glass onto these like, I don't know if you call them rafters or whatever, where somebody's using them to paint, and like the camera like goes through the breaking glass. It's a really cool shot. A scene where it doesn't really work would be in The Death of Strawberry Fields, where they go into the bedroom and she's covered in oil and you don't get a clear shot of it. Like in Goldfinger, it worked. It was kind of creepy the way that she was just like there, dead, covered in gold. In this, she's covered in oil, and they don't give you a clear shot of anything until the very end, and it's like a fade out. And there are moments in this film that I do think Mark Forster's direction shines, but there are many also that there are a few that really don't. But here's the thing, the editing and the action scenes in Casino Royale wasn't that great either. I know there are people who think I'm wrong on that, or who think other people are wrong on that. It does feel like a Bourne movie in the first film. And at least in this film, you got some scenes that were like, you had like 2-second cuts, which are fine. In the last film, like most of the action scenes were cut weirdly, so I don't really understand why the editing thing only stretches to this one. But excuse me. But yeah, like I don't really understand a lot of the big problems people have with this film. Other than the direction, I don't really see any standout issues. The Bond girl isn't that bad. Bond's motivation is there. It's a decent villain. And yeah, you got a beautiful location too. Like I don't. It's also very well paced. Again, there's action. There's a pretty steadfast pace for the first 50 minutes, and then you get more of a slowish plot section, which isn't boring, but it's not, because I'm actually interested in the story and the characters, and Craig is showing that he has improved since the last films. And yeah, I enjoyed the film. I don't know what else I can say. I guess I'll go to the pros and cons. The pros, again, Daniel Craig has improved significantly from his first film. Olga Kurylenko, Maciej Amalrik, Giancarlo Giannini, Judi Dench, all do good jobs. The score by David Arnold is pretty good. It's better than the last film, I think. Again, there were some cool action bits. The raid on the hotel at the end was pretty cool. Some pretty nice shots. Even if the editing isn't that great, Mark Forster's cameraman or cinematographer did a great job of making a lot of these parts absolutely gorgeous. I'm glad that the tone has been fixed from the last film, being completely serious, to this film having a bit of a tongue-in-cheek at times, tongue-in-cheek vibe at times. Cons, again, wasn't crazy about Gemma Arterton's acting, or Jesper Christensen, or David Harbour even. I don't really understand why people love David Harbour. I don't. I think he's kind of annoying. Apparently he's in Stranger Things. I only watched season 1. I could not get into it. I didn't like that it was trying too hard to be a family show rather than actual horror, and I wish it had gone full force with the horror. Again, the editing at times is pretty fast cutting. But yeah, I don't have a ton of big issues with the film. I think it's a good Bond film. I don't really get... I just don't really get the big deal. I don't get what's so bad about it. But yeah, If you enjoyed the review, comment down below, like the video, subscribe, and movie reviewer next door.